Okay. Okay, I did it again. I just had a 13-minute tape or whatever you call these things, video, and I hadn't turned the microphone on. So now I'm starting another one, and I hadn't turned the microphone on. And I made this little tape that says mic on that I'm going to put on the camera, hopefully to remind myself. But anyway, let me just back up briefly. It's a camera I haven't used. I've had it about a year. It's a Kodak ZI-8, I believe. And the reason I haven't used it is there's no way to monitor what the camera is seeing, which is kind of ridiculous because it's primarily a video camera. You know, it has the ability to take those still snaps, but it's made to be a video camera. They went to the trouble to have an external mic, as you can see. But why you can't monitor it, I don't know. So I have no idea what the camera is seeing. And so this may be another waste of time. Who knows? But what I wanted to talk about was Ted Williams. And no, not the famous Ted Williams, the baseball player. This is the Ted Williams who I'm sure most of you have heard of, the guy with the golden voice, I believe that's how they describe him. He's the fellow who was and may still be now homeless, and a fellow connected, I believe, with a TV station. I can't remember where this was. It was in the north somewhere. Would see him on the street from time to time. You know, he hung out on an island, you know, traffic island, you know, with the sign and all of that. So he took a video of this fellow because of this voice. And he was an immediate success, to use that word, as far as getting people's attention. Excuse me. And it seems like overnight he was somehow given a house or a place to live. I believe the Kraft company hired him to do some commercials, and there were several job offers, in my understanding, obviously according to the, you know, CNN or MSNBC or whatever. Anyway, saw a clip of a couple of interviews he did with his mom and his family. Boy, the mom didn't seem all that keen on much of anything. And come to find out, the fellow hadn't been sober for 2 years, which was what he had told people. He had been drinking, you know, daily. Anyway, there was a call to a hotel, I believe out in California somewhere, and there had been some kind of confrontation or whatever, family confrontation. I believe it was with Williams and his daughters, who I don't think he's seen for a while. No charges or anything. And then he ends up, of course, on the Dr. Phil show. Now, I know nothing about Dr. Phil. I've seen, you know, over the years a couple little tiny snips, you know, on CNN or whatever. Occasionally his name will be mentioned. Of course, he's one of Oprah's proteges. And have no idea if, you know, in other words, I have no opinion about him one way or the other. So they get this fellow on Dr. Phil's show, evidently, and Dr. Phil either convinces him or coerces him, or whatever term you want to use, to go into rehab. Yes, rehab, ladies and gentlemen. So he goes to rehab. So the paper said he left what's called AMA, against medical advice. It doesn't mean like he had a brain tumor and they wanted to operate. It just means, as far as the doctors were concerned, his treating physician was concerned, he you know, hadn't completed the program or wasn't ready to leave the facility or whatever. They do the same thing if you go to a hospital and you leave before the attending physician says that, you know, you're medically able or medically stable or whatever term you want to use, and they refer to it as you leave against medical advice. It's more or less no big deal. However, I think an insurance company, and you know, of course, oh, what's his name? Mr. Williams doesn't have any insurance, I'm sure, but an insurance company, you know, may maybe not pay a claim. I don't know if they can do that or not, but because you're basically saying, hey, you know, you're telling me, you're the doctor treating me, you're telling me I need to stay a few more days, but I'm going to leave, so against medical advice. And that's what he did. So, where do you think he is now? Well, I think we all have a pretty good idea. I read some of the comments on the article, and most people were pretty kind and sympathetic and empathetic, or whatever term you want to use. I, it's ironic. I quit my job 6 or 8 weeks ago. I'm not sure even when, and it's been a while. And since that time, I've been talking about my job, which is kind of bizarre, I admit. But hey, this thing just came up. And yes, over the almost 20 years that I was out there working, you know, I would say daily, would most likely have some contact with either a homeless person, a drug user, an alcohol user, or a combination of all three, whatever. So it's not as though I haven't seen these people before. And I can see why the family's ticked off. You know, I can see why the mom was sort of distant, if you will, from him. Obviously, she wished him well and all of that, but I think unless you've had a family member or you've been involved in this, or it's kind of hard to even imagine how difficult it is. You know, the same cycles, time and time again, that oh yeah, let me back home, I'm not going to drink anymore. Oh, let me back home, I'm not going to use crack anymore. Oh yes, Mom, this is the time, man, this is the time. And of course the families, you know, it's quite a substantial financial cost to them, that if they're paying for the food and of course getting no help with rent and so on and so forth. And typically, if they're using anything other than alcohol, you can almost guarantee they are stealing from the family. You can guarantee that. I've had families that I talked to, you know, had this television taken 2, 3, 4 times. You know, they can almost steal it before they get a new one in the house. So I don't know what I'm even going on and on about here. I'm not even sure if I have a point to make. I most likely don't. But for those of you who didn't see this, boy, the fella had this magnificent, I guess you would say, voice. Wow. I mean, just boom, just like that. And I could be mistaken, but I think before, you know, he ended up on the streets, I think he was most likely a broadcaster of some kind. So I guess that's it. Mr. Williams is out there, and it's going to be interesting to see if he pops back up again, and if so, what will be going on with him. I'm not making light of the fact that when people have a drinking problem, it's not difficult to solve. You know, it is truly difficult. And rehab isn't a bad place to start. I'm not all that keen on rehab for the simple reason it's the 12-step stuff, and I don't particularly care for that. But one thing rehab will do, especially if you're homeless, it'll get you off the street for a while, get you cleaned up, and get you away from the booze, and give you an opportunity, you know, to detox, if you will, and to sit back and, assuming you're able, sit back and try to take a look at your life, what it's been, and see if you can, you know, come up with some kind of plans or something to make it better. But you know, too often, back when I was working and doing this kind of stuff, the people would show up, and you would go to a little bit of trouble to try to get them in a detox place or a crisis stabilization, whatever term you want to use. And some of them, you know, by the time, sometimes it would take 3, 4, 5 hours, phone calls and sending medical records and all this other kind of business. And sometimes they would leave the ER before you even finished. Sometimes they would actually get to the place and leave immediately. They wouldn't even sign in, so to speak. So that was pretty aggravating. And sadly, for these people and for society who is paying for it, you know, they're in and out of these places all the time. I remember the other city I worked for, could be wrong on this, but you know, there were a few people who had been, if you can believe this, to a detox place 300 times. Come on. You know, I mean, is there any real desire to under those circumstances, you know, stop using alcohol or what have you? Of course, a lot of people say it's a disease. I disagree. Although there was a gentleman, I can't remember his name, who sent me an article and insisted I read it, which I did, which was a pretty interesting article. it may have some components under some circumstances. I don't know. But the thing is, the long and the short of it is either you use drugs or alcohol or you don't. If you're having a problem, then you need to get the thing under control. And there's plenty of help out there. But the folks who are in the helping business do get discouraged because the same people are showing up time and time again. And you would always or often say to them a couple of things. I was talking about Mr. Williams and alcohol. I don't know if he uses drugs or not, but you would say to someone, well, when you had this urge to go by 7-Eleven and get a bottle of wine or whatever, why didn't you call someone? And 99.9% of them didn't have a response for that. They had absolutely no response. The other thing you would often say to people, well, not often, not on this one, but the crack stuff, you would say, hey, it seems to be sort of known around the world that people that you can't really screw around with crack, according to the users and the addicts, or whatever term you want to use, that you basically use it once, you're going to have a pretty hard time not using it a second time. And most people, I don't think, use crack recreationally. I'm sure there are some who do. My logic professor said some means one or more. But basically, the other thing, too, is crack and those other kinds of drugs are illegal. So you basically have a criminal also, regardless of whether you can make a good case for drugs being legal or not. That's not the point. And regardless of whether you can make a good case or not for marijuana not being as dangerous, for lack of a better word, than alcohol. It's still illegal. And I think there's two aspects of that. One aspect is you may think, oh gosh, I'm just buying some marijuana. How's that going to hurt anybody? Well, there's this whole drug industry behind this, and these people are killing each other over so-called drug cartels and all the other kinds of things, which I know absolutely nothing about. But people are getting killed because you're using marijuana, more or less. You can say, hey, if you and your buddies weren't using marijuana and nobody was using marijuana, there would be a lot less of this gang stuff going on and people getting killed. That's sort of the way it is. That has nothing to do with whether the use of marijuana is safer or less harmful than the use of alcohol. It has nothing to do with that. It also has nothing to do with whether or not marijuana should or shouldn't be legal. Right now, it's not. Period. How the hell did I get off on this? I truly don't know. I was talking about Mr. Williams. Maybe I got off on that because I didn't even know what I was going to say about him. But anyway, sum this up and get away from here. By the way, this camera has this slick remote control, so I can just flick like this and turn it off. I don't have to go like this, like I do with the other camera. But anyway, I'm not sure if I'll post this because it is kind of dorky, and I may not even be in this thing because I don't know what the camera is saying. But hey, I'll most likely post it because I post most of these rotten things anyway. I'm in kind of a good mood tonight too. So that's sort of what I had to say about Mr. Williams if you had not heard of him. Anyway, I wish Mr. Williams well. I hope he can somehow turn this baby around. I mean, people were really lining up, giving him offers, it would seem, what the news, or CNN and MSNBC, what those folks were saying. I had tons of people out there who wanted to hire him. And yes, it is a shame, I guess you would say. Here's a life that's going to, continue to go down the tubes, if you will, based on the fact that he won't or can't, whatever term you want to use, stop using alcohol. Anyway, I guess that's it. That's enough. And as Pat Condell would say, peace, ladies and gentlemen, peace. I'm going to hit this little button and turn this baby off.